All right, so let's get ready to get going on today's class. All right. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to continue our look at research methodology. So continuing to think about what we need to do in order to solidify the methods, get that down, get that squared away and taken care of, because we are creeping up to where we're going to start doing our IRB protocols. And one of the things that we need to know for the IRB protocols is what are we going to be doing to these subjects. So we're getting to the point now where it's time to finalize all those things and actually start creating some of the things that we'll need for our methodology. All right, but before we get to that, just real quick, yep.
I have a question about our peer reviews.
Okay, you might not be the only one.
Yeah, mine was mainly about the point rating for images. If there aren't any images included, how would we grade that?
Oh, okay. So if there aren't any images included, typically if, in general, if a criteria does not apply, give them just full points on that criteria. So if you're not using any images, then technically you've referred to them correctly. And I just find that's kind of like the most consistent way. However, if you have not done that, be aware that, again, your grading of them on that 5-point scale is not going to affect their grade on the draft. And if you say, oh, you didn't cite your images correctly, and then they realize I don't have any images in this one, it'll be clear to them, you know, what it is. But usually, if it doesn't apply to that particular draft, give them just full points and say, you know, you did it all right. Mm-hmm.
And that's due next week, or was it due at midnight? So I got
it was due at midnight last night.
Yeah, I got a notification at 12:01 that they were late.
Yeah. So the peer reviews. When was the draft due?
Last night.
Wait, the draft was due last night?
Yeah.
And then the peer review should not be due.
Right. That's what I thought.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be your issue then. Maybe that's your issue. Okay. Well, sorry about that. Let me just real quick take a look at this. Great. So now that we got that taken care of, we'll just real quick talk about the next phase in that social media professional development. This is assignment number 3. So one of the things that is great about having a social media presence, being part of these networks, is that they can be very beneficial and they can help you out to basically do work that you need to do. So this is what I like to call the big ask. And basically, once you're part of a network, you can ask them for help in various ways. So for example, here's one that I came across where Randy McCarthy was clearly teaching a course where APA writing was being introduced for the first time. And he just said, academic friends, what is the best advice for undergraduate who will be writing their first APA-style manuscript this semester? I would like to give them tips and tricks from the pros, i.e. you, please and thank you. So this is a great way to get information like this, because rather than spending hours on Google and trying to find best practices and different techniques and different tips, you can just crowdsource it and say, look, you guys are the experts. Anybody who's taught a course before, what's your experience? What do you think? What do you think is the best idea? Now, this I call the big ask, because you are literally asking other people to do your work for you, right? The code here is that I don't want to spend hours doing this, so why don't you guys take some time out of your busy day and just let me know what you think is the best way to do this, do this particular thing. So we're working towards getting to this point, and we're not going to do it in this course, right? We're not going to have you as part of an assignment do the big ask. But basically, this is one of the goals that you're kind of you want to attain. You want to get to that point where you can go to people and say, hey, I'm part of your community. This is what I need help for. Can you tell me about the best ways to do this? Can you tell me information about the best graduate school programs to apply to? Can you tell me anything about scholarships that might be available? Stuff like that. You want to get to that point, but we're not quite there yet. And the way that you get there is you basically have to give before you take. So in any of these communities, you don't want to go in there and basically contribute nothing and then just start asking for help. You want to get in there and you want to make your contributions first so that people can see, oh, this is somebody who's helping out the community, so that when it comes your turn to get help, they're more likely to give it to you. So you want to give before you take. And, here's Randy McCarthy here. And one of the ways that you can give, even at an early stage in your career, is to simply help people spread their information, share their information, and simply basically retweet some of their tweets. So, for example, Randy McCarthy here, he's a social psychologist in Northern Indiana, Illinois University. Basically, his area of research is over here. My area of research is over here. There's not really a lot that I could do for Randy that will be helpful. There's not really a lot that any of you could do for Randy that would be directly helpful. But one thing that I did do was I came across that tweet that he sent out, and I thought to myself, well, this is great. Let me spread the word. And I retweeted it, and I shared it with my network of people. So that might not seem like a lot, but it's a contribution. I'm making a contribution to his work. I'm helping him out. And, just put some great advice in the thread and retweeted it and sent it out. So that's one way to make a contribution at any stage. So it doesn't matter if you're a PhD, doesn't matter if you're an undergraduate. Anybody can retweet and help people get their word out. So with that in mind, we're going to start this practice of giving before we do any of the big asks and take. So for this week, what I want you to do is retweet any 2 tweets from any of your psychologists that you follow. And to kind of make sure that we're getting out there, don't retweet my tweets, retweet somebody else's. So you're all following me plus 6 additional psychologists by now. So pick one of those other 6, and as you go through your feed, anything that you find interesting, anything that you feel like, oh, this would be something that I'd want people to know about, just retweet those. You can retweet with a comment. You can just straight retweet. But one thing that you want to do is make sure that when you do retweet, you put the hashtag so that I can follow your participation here. So this won't be one where you got to upload anything to Canvas or send me anything in an email. But when you retweet your first psychologist, use the hashtag IUSB FuturePsych01 for your first tweet. And then you use the hashtag IUSB FuturePsych02 for your second one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to search for that hashtag and just see, who's been participating and who's been giving back, before the big ask. So again, you can comment if you like, like the comment that I made, oh, some great advice on this thread. You don't need to comment anything depending upon, what you might want to do, but definitely include the hashtag for your first one, IUSB FuturePsych01. For your second one, IUSB FuturePsych02. And that is going to be due when your introduction peer reviews are due as well, Monday, January 28th by midnight. All right. Yep.
Or you retweet Psychology Club. The Psychology Club's Twitter.
You can do that as well if people want to find the Psych Club as well. Yeah. Yep.
Should they be tweets from 2 different people?
Doesn't matter. It can be the same individual. So what you'll find is that occasionally you'll find that some people are very active. So I follow, a bunch of different psychologists. Some of them I won't hear anything for a long time. Some of them I'll hear something like every single day. And basically, if I see something and it interests me, or if I check out the link that they provided and I was like, oh, this is a great article, I'll just retweet it and I'll be like, oh, this fascinating look at neuroaesthetics, or when the Comics Grid was basically tweeting out their archives and they tweeted out my article, I retweeted that and I basically said, this one's me, yay, and I just retweeted it out. So it can be the same person that you retweet. Mm-hmm. Any other questions about this? All right, so let's once again remember the big picture. We're doing our research projects. We're making our contributions to psychology. One of our end goals is to present at the IUSB Undergraduate Research Conference. So again, if you haven't already checked this out, I would highly recommend check out the website. The application submission deadline, again, this is in March 22nd. And all you need to apply for a presentation is like a 1-paragraph synopsis of what your project is about, including maybe preliminary findings. We should have them by then, but it doesn't take much to submit. So keep that on your mind, keep that on your horizon. We, like I said before, you know, you want to give before you take. As a student, you have been taking a lot in your career. You've been taking a lot of information in, you've been taking a lot of effort in from your teachers, and you really haven't, let's face it, made a contribution back to your area. This is going to be one of your first opportunities to say, all right, I took in a lot of information from psychology. Here's a contribution. Here's something that I've made, something that I've done, and we want to get it out in public, and this is one of the best ways to start that up. All right, so we have our roadmap here for getting to from nothing up until our published article and our presentations. Today we're going to be talking about the IRB protocol and the section draft for the method. So this is what we're working on right now. Do the peer reviews for the introduction as well. Don't forget about the importance of that. But the new information we're looking at is the IRB protocol and the section drafts. So not reliability and validity, but anyways, we're going to talk a little bit about the IRB protocols, how to, use of images, reminder, we have one little clarification on that. Then we're going to take a look at Qualtrics, and we'll have some time to collaborate. So next class when we meet, Erica Zinda, our IRB liaison here at IUSB, she is going to be joining us to basically take us through the IRB Lite procedure that everybody in this class is going to be following. So I've gotten clarification, everybody but two. So I got clarification in terms of what qualifies and what is required for IRB. And by their criteria, these student projects do not require an IRB procedure, but as part of the learning process, we are going to complete an IRB Lite procedure so that you gain that experience. So on that note, just to kind of let you know what we're going to be going over. In Canvas, I did upload a couple of documents, and she will be taking a look at some of these. So one of the things that you will need in your final completed experiment, if you're going to be recruiting subjects, is you're going to need this study information sheet. So this is a template of the study information sheet. So I would recommend before our next class, just take a look at this one page and the information that it's asking for. So for example, notice that you need the duration, the age of the participants. They need to be 18 years old or older. There has to be a statement of benefits, a statement of risks, confidentiality, compensation. We have guidelines for the compensation that'll come up next class as well. Who to contact, that'll come up next class as well. But basically, all of the information that you need in that study information sheet. So she'll have more to say about this, but this is basically the first thing that your subjects are going to see. So if you're running face-to-face, this is one of the first pages that you hand to them when they show up. If you're doing it online, this is the first page that they come to when they see that link. And it's basically the information that they need in order to consent to that participation. The other thing that she is going to be going over is the IRB research protocols, or as they call it, the IRB Lite procedure. And what this is where you're going to tell both Erica and myself, so we're going to be the ones reviewing this, what it is that you're going to be doing to your subjects. So if you're not running subjects, you still need to fill this out as an educational exercise. If you are running subjects, you need to fill this out before you run your subjects. So she'll go over all the basic details, but project title, describe the purpose of the project in lay terms, list and describe all project interactions, including frequency and duration of procedures, length of individuals in the project. Be sure to include each step subjects will participate in, as well as how data will be handled. If this is an online study, include the URL. I'll have more to say about that today. But basically, you can see in that question number 3, it is basically saying, give us your method. What are these subjects going to be doing? So we need to start locking down all the little parts of the method so that when we hand this in, by the time we need to hand this in, we'll be ready, we'll know, we'll have it all good to go. Anticipated end of the research, and then subject recruitment. So if you're recruiting subjects, how are you going to identify them? Basically, they either need to be students at IUSB, and they need to be 18 years of age or older, as well as there's a way to identify or include family and friends. So we'll get her to talk about that as well. How are they going to be recruited? Through the SONA system or through Facebook? So a lot of these questions, that's why Erica is coming in at that time, next class. So go through these. I would recommend go through these, and basically if you have any questions about either of the sections or any of the sections of that, make a note of that so that you be sure to ask her when she's here. Take advantage of that time that she's going to be showing up. We'll be using introductory psychology students or other vulnerable populations. You will be using intro psychology students. Please describe how you ensure their autonomy to make a voluntary, non-coercive decision to participate in your research. So we'll ask her again about the best ways to do that. Typically, that's part of this study information sheet where we tell them that there's no penalty for withdrawing. Copy and paste the study information sheet by the end of the form, so you'll have to update that study information sheet. What conflict of interest might exist for this project? Unless you are making financial money off of this project, so unless you have a stake in Qualtrics, right, a financial investment, this is going to be none, typically. If you do have any financial investments, let me know how you got those, please. And then risks and benefits, we'll talk about those as well. But the risks are going to be, if you're going this route, minimal, which means that the risks are no more than would be encountered by anybody in their day-to-day student life. So if you are having somebody fill out a survey online, there are risks involved with filling out a survey online, right? For all we know, the computer might explode, right? For all we know, Facebook might be spying on them with their camera, right? For all we know, we don't know what the potential risks are. But we know that the potential risks are no different than their daily life would be. So as long as you're just asking students to do things that students do, which is read questions and provide answers, the level of risk is minimal. It's no larger than what is presented in everyday life. And then describe the procedures for protecting against minimizing potential risks. You list that below. So again, she will list all the considerations to have for this. And then I will also see if I can put together a sort of stock procedures for many of these. So for example, state the potential benefits of the information that might accrue to society, science and society in general as a result of this work. There used to be one, where is it? It's not in here. Oh yeah, will subjects benefit directly for participation in the study? You might think yes. The answer to this is typically no. Direct benefits are where you provide more than just an educational opportunity. So for example, if your study involved a CAT scan, then a direct benefit for this might be for participation, might be the identification of a brain tumor, right? That could be a direct benefit. Just asking questions on a paper and pencil is going to be no direct benefit. So there are going to be questions here where you will write, there are no direct benefits to the students. And it might sound like, well, maybe there is, But in terms of what the IRB considers those, there is not. So these have been uploaded to Canvas in an IRB resources file. I would highly recommend just read through them rather quickly. They're rather short. And then if you're going through your, as you're going through your methods and making those final decisions, if you are wondering about, in particular, any one of these areas, especially if you think it might apply to your area a little bit differently, be sure to come prepared to ask Erica questions about that, because she's extremely helpful, extremely knowledgeable, especially times when it's not entirely clear which IRB procedure is the best to apply for that. For students that are not running subjects, you will also need to complete this as well. So some of these questions are going to be less involved if you're not running subjects. So for example, will subjects be benefit directly? You will just write, there are no subjects in this, or we're not recruiting subjects. Physical privacy will be protected. You won't need to do that. But for other areas such as the methodology, which is going to be the big section, you will need to say, this is how I'm collecting the data, this is how I'm analyzing data, here's the criteria, and here's all that. So again, read through these so that you know what's coming up for the next time that we meet. And that's going to happen this Thursday. All right, I would say any questions on that, but if you do have any questions on that, write them down. Same for Erica. We got the expert coming, so let's take advantage of that this Thursday. All right, use of images. So just to remind you, now that we've begun working on drafts, all the images that you're going to use must come from Wikimedia Commons if you're going to use third-party images. So again, they have a large repository of images that have been cleared for Creative Commons use. Typically what that means is that you are legally allowed to use them and reproduce them so long as you give accreditation, so long as you give a citation. And they will provide you as well with the information, who's the author, who owns the copyright, all that kind of info. So use this as a resource. And again, you can find a lot of helpful diagrams, helpful images that are free to use, such as images of the brain. Oh, and you can also check the license. Oftentimes you can modify these images as well. And there are rules that basically say if you do modify it, just upload the modified version to share with the Commons. But there are ones where you can modify them as well. So take advantage of that if you want to use images in your reports. And then the other one is that any original images that you make, you can use in your report. So for example, we got the methods coming up. And if you want to offer a visual figure of kind of like the step-by-step for the methods, like first they see this, and then they see this, and then they see this. If you make that on your own, you can use it. You own the copyright for that. Even if you've lifted the paradigm from somebody else, it's the image that matters. So if you make the image for your own paper, you can base it off of somebody else's image, but as long as it's your own work, you own the copyright to that particular image. Especially for schematic stuff. Don't go tracing the Mona Lisa and think that you can, print t-shirts with that. But basically, if you're making your own images, making the schematics, you own the copyrights to those. So feel free to do that, for example, in the methods section. If you have like a diagram of step 1, step 2, step 3, you can reproduce that. That's completely fine. All right, one last thing, one extra thing though that I wanted to mention. So this use of images reminder. Yep.
Sorry. So I remember in P471 you said that we should not use color in our papers because if they get published in the paper journals,
yes,
we get charged for them. So
yep.
Should we not be concerned about that?
Do not be concerned with that this time around because it does not cost more to print color where we're going to be doing our publications. Okay, so don't worry about that. It's a great question though. Typically, and this is something to keep in mind for your future career, when you go and submit to a journal, they'll always have like little journal checklists or guidelines. Check the figure guidelines. Some of them will charge exorbitant amounts for color printing because it's an expensive process. So if at all it can be avoided, make sure that yours are in black and white. However, ours are going to be mostly online, and in the physical publication, it's there's no more of a cost for color versus black and white. So feel free to go as colorful as you like. Do make it readable though. You know, rainbows are beautiful, but not if you can't read the writing that or make sense of what it is that they're trying to say. All right. So one last little thing to kind of clarify in terms of the use of images. This use of images, this need to either get something from Creative Commons that has a Creative Commons license where you, through attribution, can legally use it, or create your own images that you own the copyright to. That applies to the research paper, and in general, it applies to publications. So for your research paper, if you were to submit it to a journal, they would ask you where your images came from. You would have to provide citations or, you know, a statement that I own the copyright for these images. Or if you got permission from people to use their images for people that own the copyright, they would need that in writing as well. So these rules that we kind of went here, they apply to research paper and they apply to publications, but they don't apply to all the places where you're going to disseminate your research. Specifically, they don't apply to oral presentations. So when you're presenting at the undergraduate research conference, feel free to use images from any source that you have. If you take them from a scientific source, you should cite them, because it's not your work and it's not your idea. So if you use, for example, a graph from somebody's paper, make sure that you cite them. But unlike the publications, there's different copyright rules when it's not going to be in a physical or permanent type of presentation or physical or permanent type of artifact. So for presentations, you can. So as you're putting together your or collecting your resources, collecting your images, collecting figures, keep a separate folder of things that you can use for the URC, because images are a great way to communicate information, and they're just nice to look at. The other place is also your posters. So we are going to have a poster session. And again, posters are not something that go into some sort of physical published or online published repository. They're up in the hallways for, you know, a few hours, and then you take them down, and usually they're not available anymore. So the rules are different for those as well. So on your presentations, on your posters, cite where you get your images from, but feel free to use copyrighted images. However, in your publications, that does not count, or sorry, that does not apply. You need to use ones that you have a license to use, which is the ones that are, again, from the Wiki Commons, or your own copyright images. So yeah, so as long as you provide a citation for the image, you can use them in presentations and posters, but you need to have either permission or copyright to get it into the publications. All right, any questions on that? All righty. Qualtrics. So this is going to be mostly for students that are doing research with human subjects and can do their studies online. So for your online studies, you're going to be using Qualtrics. Some of you might have used Qualtrics before. For others, it might be completely new. So the way that you access Qualtrics, and I would highly recommend, you know, start poking around in it, start actually programming your experiment into Qualtrics. But the way that you access it, you can access it through OneIU. If you just search for Qualtrics, it'll bring up the Qualtrics app or link. And then when you sign into that, or when you click on that, it'll take you to this login page. And this is a cloud-based survey tool that is for faculty, students, staff, and other units, I guess, here at IU. So you have access to this resource. You can use this resource. You sign in through your IUSB sign-in, and then you can access Qualtrics. One of the things that you might want to take a look at is down at the bottom of this page, there is this knowledge base, and it has this link, creating and modifying Qualtrics accounts. So if you click on that, it'll take you to this About Qualtrics at IU. And then this will kind of help you along with any sort of sign-up issues that you might have. So if you're trying to sign in and it doesn't take you straight in, this might be a place to find that information in terms of what it is that you need to do. But one reason that I wanted to show this is that you want to use Qualtrics because part of the IRB procedure, part of protecting your subjects, is making sure that their data is protected as well. So if you use another online survey tool, we don't know whether it's safe or unsafe. We don't know whether it's risky for data management or whether it reaches levels of confidentiality. But in terms of Qualtrics, at IU, Qualtrics is appropriate for use with sensitive institutional data classified as critical, including data containing information protected by the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act or the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So basically, this is your way of knowing that Qualtrics meets that level of data protection that is going to be sufficient for your projects. So if you don't use Qualtrics, be prepared in your IRB statement to go through a long list of ways that you're going to make sure that your subject's data is protected. If you do use Qualtrics, then part of the justification that your data will be protected is to say, the experiment will be done completely in Qualtrics. All right, so you log in, and this is what my Qualtrics page looks like. So I currently have one active study, one study that just finished, and one other study that stopped a while back. But it has a nice listing of your projects that you're working with. It gives you the status as well, and it lets you know how many people did this in the last 12 days, how many responses do you have, questions, status, all this kind of stuff. So it gives you a lot of information in terms of who's participating. But until you have that all set up, you can also go to Help up here. So even if you don't have a Qualtrics survey going right now, you can go to that little Help button right there, and it'll take you to the Qualtrics basically Help headquarters here. So when you come here, this is basically a great place to start if you're completely new to Qualtrics, or a great place to find information if you've already used it, but you're like, oh, how do I do this? This is a great place to get that information. So what you're going to probably want to take a look at here, there's Getting Started. That's always a good place to start if you're starting. But a lot of the information that you're going to be looking for is in this Survey tab here. So this is it expanded. So one of the places that you're going to want to take advantage of the power of Qualtrics is in block options. And one of the things that I often use is, in addition to other block options, is that question randomization. So there are, in Qualtrics, you can make different blocks that contain a number of different questions, and then it will randomize those questions for you. So if in your experiment you've identified order effects, and you want to make sure that your questions are done in a random order, it is supremely easy in Qualtrics just to hit that randomized question thing, and that'll take care of any sort of order effects. If, on the other hand, you're using a survey that you're borrowing from somewhere else and the questions are in order, don't randomize it. But you have that option. It's a nice, powerful tool to use in Qualtrics, that question randomization. The other one that you're going to want to take a look at is this idea of survey flow. And survey flow in Qualtrics is where, depending upon an answer to a question, you can send a subject on different paths. So this is a great way to get subjects into randomly assigned into control conditions and randomly assigned into experimental conditions. This is a great way if you're doing, for example, gender differences. And your question is, which of these, genders are you? Based on those answers, you can send them to different areas of your experiment. So if you have, experimental conditions, control conditions, different conditions for different categories, this survey flow is a great way to use questions to send your subjects to different sections of the survey. So you can check those out as well. And the place here we find in terms of survey flow, branch logic, is one of the ones that where you can say, if the response is this, send the subjects over here to this block. If the response is this, send the subjects over here to this block. And then there's also other things, randomizing of your survey and other information, embedded data. So basically check that out, start poking around in Qualtrics and see if you can start actually embedding your questions, creating your survey, and getting all those all that information set up and ready to go. Other things, they have training and webinars. So if you're not so much into reading instructions, you can watch instructions as well. So if you click on the training and webinars here, they have, whoop, there it goes. They have on-demand webinars or live training. The on-demand webinars is basically like Netflix. You just go there, you pick the webinar you want to watch, and they'll run you through it. So they have, for the on-demand, they got Quick Start with Qualtrics. You can watch it here, or if you want to do French, German, or Spanish, you can watch it there as well. Advanced survey building, and basically a whole bunch of other topics. You'll probably want to start with the Quick Start with Qualtrics if you've never done it before. And it's a 45-minute training webinar session that basically takes you through a lot of the basic features, how to start a survey, how to enter questions, different types of questions. So there's questions where you can, questions with just text, questions with a picture, questions with video, open choice questions, multiple choice questions, forced choice questions, questions where you can choose one or as many of the options as you want. There's a whole bunch of different questions. It's a nice webinar, 45 minutes, and it'll get you a nice kind of quick start with your Qualtrics survey. All right, so again, Qualtrics, it's when you're going to use this, it's a good idea to kind of have a general plan of what your study is going to be before you go to Qualtrics, so you can identify questions that belong together in different blocks, which blocks lead to other blocks, and then which ones need to be randomized, which ones do not. So even if you have something such as page 1, study information sheet, and then randomized to either experimental condition or control condition. And then at the end of those blocks, they both go back down to the dependent measure, where we're going to have these survey questions. Even if it's something as simple as that, it's a good idea to have like this flow chart of your experiment before you go to Qualtrics so that you can just enter in the information when you're designing your survey. All right, any basic questions about Qualtrics or how to access it? Has anybody used it before? You got a couple. Is anybody using it and they're brand new? Got one or two. Okay, so that's good. If you used it before, you got a bit of a head start, but it is multi-featured. So make sure, again, that you're taking full advantage of it. Use the help desk, use the webinars and those other links to basically make your project as good as it possibly can be. And then in your IRB protocol, if you are doing it online, in your IRB protocol, you will include a link to your Qualtrics survey. So Qualtrics will give you a dedicated link to your survey. That's what you're going to submit as part of your IRB protocol. Me and Erica will click on that link. We'll go through your project and see if everything is up to standards. And then that is going to be the link that you're going to submit to the SONA system or through other recruitment means. So again, it's a very powerful way to get this online study up and running and ready to go. All right, so what we're going to do now, we covered a bunch of stuff today. What we're going to do now is we're going to get back into our groups and again, start discussing things about Qualtrics design, your study design. Try to get those things down so that you have a very clear idea of this is what's happening at every single step, and help each other out if you need any clarification for that, or just any other kind of collaborations that you can do. If you've already got your methodology set out, ask people what they think. Is this a good idea here, a good idea here? And let's see if we can get that all going right now. So let me pause this. All right, so as usual, discuss amongst yourselves. I'm sure that a lot of you have stuff worked out. I'm sure that a lot of you are still working on different issues. Best way to do that is to just kind of discuss it amongst yourselves and see what a fresh pair of eyes might think about it. And then if there's any thing where you need me to help, put up your hand, call me over, and I'll be more than happy to give my contribution as well. All right, so collaboration time it is. No, that was about it. I might bring her in though because I do want to get the Sona system thing and get a little bit of Qualtrics stuff. But anyway, so that's it for today's class. So again, if you are running subjects, if you're going to be recruiting human subjects to run in your experiment, and you're going to be doing it online, now's the time to start familiarizing yourself with Qualtrics. Now's the time to also start putting in questions into Qualtrics. So we're going to go over some of the details in terms of like study information sheets and things like that and where they need to go in Qualtrics. But you can always insert those, you know, later on. So if you're going to be doing an online study, start finding out about Qualtrics, determining what kind of question types you're going to use, how you're going to set it up. If you're doing it face-to-face, start thinking about what are the materials that you need to print out, you need to produce, how are you going to you know, interact with the subject. And if you're doing a corpus analysis, also start thinking about, you know, the criteria that you're going to use, how you're going to find your samples, all those little details, because we're going to have to include those in the IRB protocol. And next class is going to be the most beneficial to everyone if after Erica gives her kind of general, this is what you need to do for this, if you have specific questions about each, you know, any of the sections that you've identified as, well, what about this for my project? That would be the ideal time to ask that. So definitely take a look at that. Take a look at Qualtrics. Start, keep, you know, progressing on that. And let's make sure that we're working towards getting that method down and set. Other than that, we are done for today.